Let's be real for a second. If your JavaScript code is still full of var and nested callbacks, you're not just writing old school code, you're making your life harder. This isn't just about being trendy. It's about writing code that is predictable, easier to debug, and just plain faster to write. Today, we're going to swap out those old dusty JavaScript habits for their modern ES6 replacements. We'll fix scope issues, escape callback hell for good, and generally make your code a whole lot cleaner. These concepts are the backbone of modern frameworks like React, Vue, and Angular. So you really need to know them. Let's get to it. All right, let's start with the absolute biggest offender, the var keyword. For the longest time, it's all we had. But the problem with var is that it is function scoped. It's not block scoped, which leads to some really weird behavior. Here's a classic interview question that perfectly shows the problem. You have a simple for loop that tries to log a number after a 1-second delay. What do you expect to see in the console? If you guessed 0, 1, 2, I'm afraid you've just been bitten by the var bug. By the time these set timeout callbacks actually fire, the loop is long gone, and the single I variable that was shared by everything has just been updated to its final value. So when you hit that log statement, you get a 3, 3, 3 in the console. It's confusing, and it's a super common source of bugs. The fix? Just use let or const. They are block scoped, which means they only live inside the nearest set of curly braces, like inside of an if statement or the for loop itself. So let's refactor that same loop, swapping out var for let. Boom. This one will log 0, 1, 2, exactly like you would expect. Each loop gets its own fresh I. It's that simple. The rule of thumb these days is to use const by default for anything that you don't plan on changing. This stops you from accidentally overriding your variable's values. If you know a variable needs to be reassigned, like a counter, use let. Just don't use var, ever. If you've ever had to fetch data from an API or do anything asynchronous, you've probably seen code that looks like a pyramid flopped on its side. We call this callback hell, or the pyramid of doom. It's what happens when you have to nest callbacks inside of other callbacks because every step depends on the last one finishing. Say we have this set of functions here to get users with callbacks, to get those users' orders, and to get the order details. Using callback hell, our end function would look something like this. This code gets indented deeper and deeper, and it becomes a nightmare to read. Forget trying to maintain it or handle its errors properly. It becomes an absolute mess. The modern way to handle this is with promises. A promise is basically an object that represents its future value, either the successful result of your operation or an error. Instead of nesting, you can chain .then calls one after another, flattening this pyramid into an easy to read sequence. But the real game changer is async await. This syntax is pure magic. It lets you write asynchronous code that looks just like regular synchronous code. So if we refactor this to use async await, it would look like this. Each one of our steps would get a resolve instead of a callback. And then when we're calling this function, we would call fetch data, and then we would call each step individually, one after the other, just popping that await keyword in front of the promise. And your code will literally wait for each step to finish before moving on to the next one. It makes everything incredibly intuitive, and you can even use standard try-catch blocks for error handling. It's no exaggeration to say it has totally changed the game for JavaScript. Ah, The this keyword, probably the most notoriously confusing part of JavaScript. With a regular function, what this refers to is decided by how the function is called. This is called dynamic context, and it means the value of this can change when you least expect it, especially inside callbacks. Imagine you have an object that logs its own name after a delay. Inside this set timeout callback, this doesn't refer to the object anymore. It points to the global window object in the browser. So this.name is completely undefined. This is where arrow functions save the day. Arrow functions are different. They don't have their own this binding, but rather they just inherit it from the parent's scope. We call this lexical scoping. So if we rewrite that code with an arrow function, just by making this one change, the problem is gone. This now correctly points to my object because it's inherited context from the logname method. So simple, so good. Okay, just beyond fixing bugs, modern syntax makes your code so much nicer to look at. First up, if you're still mashing strings together with the plus operator, you've got to stop. Use template literals instead. Say we have a user object, and we want to send a message that includes the user's name. Instead of writing this mess, we can actually write a much cleaner version of this using backticks. It's way easier to read, and it lets you drop variables right into the string. Second, stop pulling variables out of objects and arrays one by one. Use destructuring instead. Instead of this tedious work, you can do it all in one single beautiful line that looks like this. This is a lifesaver when you're working with an API response or component props. So look, when you trade var for let and const, you kill a whole class of bugs. When you trade callback hell for async await, your code becomes 1,000 times more readable. And when you use arrow functions, you don't have to deal with those annoying this headaches anymore. Getting comfortable with these ES6 features isn't really optional anymore. It's just how modern JavaScript is written. It'll make you a better, faster developer, and it is essential for working on pretty much any web project nowadays. Thanks for watching. If this was helpful, you know what to do. And drop a comment down below to let me know. What's your favorite ES6 feature? I'll see you in the next one.